Terri Murphy from the Women's Wisdom Network, Senior Editor for Realty Times, Women in Business, Women in Real Estate in the Men's Room and RealtyTimesNewsTV.com. And today we have an exceptional individual in the Men's Room. His name is Saul Klein. He is a wildly recognized as a real estate first internet evangelist. This goes way back to the RIN days, the Realtors Information Network, where I met Saul. The founder of REAPCO, Real Estate Education Publishing Company. He was selected by the National Association of Realtors in 2003 and everywhere else as one of the most influential people in the real estate industry. And Inman News has cited him as one of those influencers just about every year going straight forward. I think they've run out of years for you, Saul. You know, you've done so much in the internet space when nobody even knew what the internet was. I was one of those early people with you and blessed to be there. We've got some issues, you know, like they said at Houston, we got a problem. We've got a problem. And it is not only the DOJ, it's how data and internet and all of these things have impacted the real estate market as we know today. You've been a licensed broker since the 70s and a president of the San Diego Association of Realtors. You know this industry like none other. What's happening out there?
It's great to be here, Terry. Great to see you. Yes, we did start this a long time ago. And what's happening is many of the things that we talked about a long time ago are coming full circle. What's old is new again. We used to say text without context is pretext. Text without context is pretext. And today, in the age of social media, what people get is a lot of text, but they get no context for it. And so we hear all kinds of stories and complaints and claims about where the industry is. But the fact is, there's always opportunity. And people need to sit down and look for the opportunity that's there. And hopefully that's what we're going to do. We're going to try to take some of the old lessons and kind of bring them forward and see if they're not applicable. We believe they are to today. So what's happening? Same old thing. People are talking about agency. People are talking about a transaction platform. People are talking about the economy. People are talking about value. And today there's such and something we want to talk about with social media, there's such an ease in the capability of spreading text without context that there's a lot of misunderstanding.
Excellent point. Absolutely an excellent point. Well, we knew years ago that there were these warehouses literally full of data, but we didn't really have the processes in place to actually extrapolate that data. And now that data is impacting how real estate will be sold, transferred, built, projected. I know that you've been heavily involved with some aspects of the industry that are literally revolutionizing how we've done real estate. And real estate has been resistant to change. I mean, golly, we've been doing it this way for a long, long time. But now as things become streamlined and combined, there's some significant changes. Why don't you address a couple of those changes?
Well, so there's some major forces out there. One happens to be, and great documents to read, the decision by the Department of Justice not to settle with the National Association of Realtors on a suit brought against the National Association of Realtors by the Department of Justice, 2020, 2018, 2019, there were
2007, I thought. The lawsuit that was brought on by DOJ. Why don't you give us a couple of insights into that lawsuit and how it's changing today?
Well, so in 2008, the National Association of Realtors and the Department of Justice settled on some parameters around the use of data as it comes from an MLS. And that lasted 10 years, lasted to 2018. 2018 through 2019, the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice held hearings as to whether or not there might be antitrust, anti-competitive practices in the real estate industry. and determined that they believe that there are, and brought charges against the National Association of Realtors because of its policies over MLSs that it doesn't own. And so today we're looking at the federal level and at the civil level a certain number of lawsuits. But the interesting thing, the two documents that people need to take a look at is the complaint against NAR by the DOJ, and then the pullback of the DOJ. And the day following that, the White House put out an executive order explaining how the powers of the executive branch of government and administrative law would be utilized to achieve the goals and objectives to make the country and business more competitive, more innovative, by changing certain things, or at least investigating certain things about certain industries. Of course, social media and the technology industries, but prominent also was the real estate industry, and taking a look at multiple listing services and how they function and whether or not they're competitive. And then cases going on at the civil level by an individual who is suing for compensation, which really is an argument being brought to bear against an MLS rule that we call the offer of compensation. So there's a challenge to the offer of compensation at the civil level. There are other challenges at the federal level. There's funding and enforcement revenue available, and the statement by the executive branch of the government that they're going to go out and look at different industries, real estate included. And we know historically, and we could talk about that all day, historically, the Department of Justice has been after certain aspects of the real estate industry for years. Things that we hold dear, things like agency, things like buyer representation, things like dual agency. So there are opinions about this. Employment as an independent contractor. And so there's certain things that the industry fights for, and there's certain things that the government over the years has fought against. But now it looks like that things are lining up where the industry needs to, and it is doing so, I'm sure, create a defense for what's going to come its way. And if you're in business, you want to make sure that you're looking at a plan B, you're looking ahead, you're looking at the changes that are coming down the line, and you're asking yourself those paradigm shift questions. What's currently impossible in your business, and if it were possible, it would fundamentally change the way you do business. And what's currently possible, and if it were impossible. So now we have an offer of compensation. It kind of is the glue that holds MLSs together. If that offer of compensation were to go away, what would be the glue that holds the MLS together? Now, we're not saying that's going to happen, but we're saying there's a threat. It's in the courts right now. NAR and MLSs have their case, but just what if the plaintiff is successful? What would the result be?
Exactly. And that's going to be a huge impact. And I know that not that it's an actually interesting document, because I reviewed it last night, and I know it's available on the dataadvocate.com, which is a new web presence that you have with partner John Riley, who's the author of The Language of Real Estate and an attorney and longtime respected real estate trainer in the industry. What's interesting about it is that John does a great job of explaining a little bit through that article. So I would recommend, if anybody's interested, to check it out on the dataadvocate.com. But you're right, this is going to impact us in ways that I don't even think we can imagine. And there's got to be a timeline. But here's the thing, it's all connected. There's the lending part of it. There's the data feed that helps people decide in municipalities if there needs to be more schools. We're talking about global warming. There's so many aspects of collecting the data around the housing transaction that it has to impact, especially if the DOJ is on it, because they're not going away. I mean, that's not.
Yeah, and we also see people talking about taking the friction out of the transaction. We hear people in technology talking about taking the friction out of the transaction. At the same time, we hear that we want to reduce costs. So we want to make things more seamless. We want to make things more streamlined. And so how is that going to take place in the industry? What types of platforms are going to be utilized to make sure that that data is accessible, not accessible, based on certain privacy and non-privacy aspects of the data collected? And is there value in that? And how do you even create value, and what constitutes that? So many questions that need to be answered, but it's a step-by-step process. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen faster than people think it's going to happen. And so this idea of taking the friction out of the transaction, an easy way to think about that is take a piece of real estate from the moment a seller puts it on the market until escrow closes and the loan is sold in the secondary market. Through that period of time, that transaction has to be touched by X number of individuals. What if you could reduce the number of individuals that have to touch that transaction from start to finish by 50%?
And there's going to be some disintermediation there, because there have been all these individuals involved in it, which of course slows the process. Then you've got state regulations, local ordinances. Wow. So what do you see?
Well, so I think there is going to be an impact. We need to start thinking about alternatives to people's current approach to the real estate business as we look at this. And the real basic concept, though, taking the friction out of the transaction. People ask, what does that mean? Well, it means reducing the human interface, because where is the friction? It's always at the point of human interface, right? So if you're really serious about taking the friction out of the transaction, what you're talking about is eliminating certain things, making them happen automatically or preset to happen at some point in time. And if you're going to take the friction out of the transaction truly, then you're going to reduce the costs. Reducing the cost means, what are the big costs in a real estate transaction on the sales side and on the loan side? So when people talk about commission rates commissions going down, or less compensation in the real estate industry, I think there's some credibility to that conversation. And not that it's necessarily going to happen or when it's going to happen, but there's definitely credibility, and people need to pay attention and watch. And these lawsuits are telltales. And the Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission's actions for or against the real estate industry are telltales of what's to come. So what's currently impossible, and if it were possible, it would fundamentally change the way you do real estate. Well, right now, I don't think you can tie together a loan and title insurance and real estate services. I think you have different federal regulatory aspects that forbid that from happening. But if you could do that, you could dramatically probably reduce the costs, because you'd be using data for multiple purposes. And that would have an impact on companies, on individuals. Big question I think we need to ask is, and people need to ask themselves these questions: what does the real estate industry of the future look like? And only from that perspective can you then determine, what does the real estate brokerage firm of the future look like? What does the real estate agent of the future look like? And most importantly, what does the real estate consumer of the future look like? And if we can then look at that and put that together, we'll be fine. And we've talked about this for many years. If we keep the consumer in mind, and we keep those speed, convenience, choice, value added, quality, service, discounts, information, those are the things consumers are looking for. So if you're in your practice, if you're paying attention to what's going on, if you're paying attention to the context, then the content can be utilized for your benefit instead of being utilized against you.
This is so interesting, because this goes back to the Realtown days, and that's when you had actually started the first online communities when nobody knew what they were, like Real Talk, AE Talk, MLS Talk. I mean, President's Talk. I mean, there was a way for us to communicate, and it was a combination, because that was the chant: speed, convenience, choice, value-added discounts, quality, information, and service. But it wasn't just that. It was, what kinds of combinations of that can you get? The combination of quality service. Well, what is that? Because it's going to be different to people's interpretation. And then the whole ePro thing, trying to get people up to speed on the internet thing, because you remember the chant. It was like, why would I want to spend $1,200 on something dark gray being a laptop that I couldn't wear? I mean, it didn't make sense because there was no progression for it. And now no one can do anything. I mean, look at the number of cell phone users. And you used to quote Alexander, the pushback for Alexander Graham Bell is like, well, everybody'd have to have one. Oh, that was impossible. Now everybody has one, basically, even in third world countries. So there seems to me that
Wait, stop a minute, Terry. Remember this. We put together a program in 1995 and it was called Getting Connected. Getting connected, because we believed, and it was true, that people were not going to go online all by themselves. Something had to motivate them. Something had to take them across the chasm. Remember Jeffrey Moore's book?
yes, of
And
course.
so how did they get across the chasm? Well, we actually did a program. We took it nationwide. You were with it. It was you and me and Mike Burnett and John Riley. We did it thousands of times. We told the story over and over and over again. It was about getting connected, which meant plugging a telephone line into the back of your computer that nobody had. So we were like selling, we used to kid with Carl Demuse. It was like we were trying to sell records to people who didn't own record players. Right.
Yeah,
and now today you look, everybody, and we use the word ubiquitous because we read it in a book by Nicholas Negroponte, Being Digital. Now everybody has it. Now it is ubiquitous. So I just have to say, congratulations, you did a great job because everybody is connected.
Yeah, no, you were the one that did that. And yes, we were in every little town and valley on the planet trying to help realtors take the terror out of technology. Now the technology isn't the terror, it's what the data can do or is shining a light on, that it's going to transform our industry. Well, I certainly hope you'll join us for some regular segments because this is so deep and so complicated. There's
a lot of things. I think it's just a lot of details that people need to build a context. And then all these details are dots. I told John Riley, we've talked about this for years. It's about connecting the dots. And so you build a context and then you connect the dots. And I'd love to be able to help you, help people connect the dots and kind of categorize the things that are important for them to know about, and then give them a resource where they can go and read about it and make their own decisions.
Well, when you were the CEO of Point2 Technologies, which goes back to 2008, and you were heavily involved in that aggregation of MLS information and how the syndication would work, that, of course, is another whole element that I'd like to have you come back and join us for. I know that if someone wanted more information about this transformation of data and what's going on in the industry as we look at the future of real estate, where would you like them to go?
Well, thedataadvocate.com, the THE dataadvocate.com would be a good place to start. And we're going to do the best job we can to get relevant information and resources available to people who have an interest in the real estate industry.
And if someone wanted to contact you for speaking, for consulting, for any of the services that you provide by yourself and or with your team, what would be the easiest way to reach you?
Saul at saulklein.com.
That's pretty easy. Well, Saul Klein, you have been one of the major gifts and disruptors in a kind way to the real estate industry. I am so delighted that you joined us here at Realty Times today in the men's room. And I would invite you again to join us on a consistent basis to bring us up to date what's going on with all things real estate, including NAR and everything that goes with that as we progress into this new millennium of real estate and how it's going to affect us. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Terry. I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, I'm Terri Murphy for the Women's Wisdom Network, Realty Times, Women in Business, Women in Real Estate in the men's room with Murph. Join us again for another segment, keeping you up to date with real estate today.